I've got my great friend, Michelle Sparrow of Sparrow Law Firm in Wilmington and Raleigh, co-hosting, and we've got a special guest, Jim Farrin. Mr. James Scott Farrin is a personal injury plaintiff's personal injury attorney in North Carolina. And Jim, thank you so much for being on True Law Stories.
It's a pleasure. Great to be here.
And, we're going to talk about, because you've got some funny stories. You've got some crazy stories that kind of are in the law, but also, just about running a law firm. Because I'm sure, you've got a lot of employees. You've got some crazy stuff that's happened. But tell us a little bit about your firm and what you do.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we're a plaintiff's law firm. I used to say personal injury law firm, but we also do now eminent domain land condemnation. We're the largest firm of this kind in the state of North Carolina. We also have offices in South Carolina. There's 64 or so attorneys and almost 300 employees. So it's a major enterprise, takes a lot of management, and came from humble beginnings. Michelle was with us back in the much earlier days, and when we were beginning to build something. But it's something that's I'm real proud of in terms of the legal work that we do for a wide range of clients in North Carolina, from auto accidents to workers' compensation, eminent domain, and class actions and
Wow.
mass torts. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
the whole
And you got into it. You weren't always, you didn't come out of law school and become a plaintiff's personal injury attorney, did you?
No, I went to Duke Law School, graduated in 1990, and back then, especially, they seemed to push Duke seemed to push us to go to work for a big law firm and represent corporations. And I was ambitious and I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went out to California and practiced at a firm there called Irella and Manella, which was a big law firm that represented Fortune 500 companies, and I was doing litigation there, insurance coverage and antitrust work, and it was big company versus big company, and I was one of the young attorneys there, and I worked on a case and did a lot of the briefing. It was fairly early on in my career there in the first couple of years, and we won the case at summary judgment, and it was a multi-million-dollar case. It was a huge victory, and I recall the corporate counsel. We didn't have Zoom or anything like that then, but we got on the phone and told him the good news. Hey, we won, and he said, "That's great, congratulations." The partners, were happy. And I guess we went home a couple hours early, but it felt real abstract. Here we are achieving a huge multi-million-dollar victory for a corporation against another corporation, and it didn't do anything for me. It felt abstract. I woke up the next day, checked the news, and the stock price for our company hadn't moved, and it just reinforced this feeling that it was lacking a bit of meaning for me. And so I ended up leaving California after 5 years, moved back to North Carolina, and decided to do something different. And on a lark, somebody I knew had a personal injury practice, and just decided, well, I'll go try that and see if I like it. If I don't, I'll stop being a lawyer and go into business or something. And started working on cases and found that I kind of liked it. And I really recall when this sunk in with me is that one of the first cases I ended up resolving, I worked on from start to finish. The settlement was modest, maybe $5,000. The client might be getting $2,000, something like that. Not a big deal in comparison to what I was used to working on in California. And so I remember the funds had come in and had cleared. And so I was able to call the client, schedule a time to meet with him and disperse the funds. And I said, this was Friday afternoon. I said, well, how does next week look, Tuesday or Wednesday? And he said, Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm coming in right now. And so I had to run to the bank, meet him. I think he was unbanked, had to vouch for him. And he, it all worked out. He got his check. It's probably, like I said, it was what felt like a modest check. But I could tell the joy on his face and what this meant. It moved my heart. It meant more to me than the multi-million-dollar case that I had worked on in California, because I could see the difference it was making in his life. Now, I don't think this difference lasted very long. I fully believe the money was gone by the weekend, but we had that moment, and I've been hooked on helping people, through personal injury work ever
That's amazing,
since.
and hopefully Michelle, he didn't have to hire Michelle after that weekend. Uh,
No.
That was later.
Yeah, that was a
That was
little
later.
and that's interesting because I've talked to a lot of personal injury attorneys over the years, and we've talked a lot about this, and people don't realize the impact because they just see you've recovered $1.6 billion for 60,000 people. That's an impressive number, but they see those billions of dollars and they just think, oh, there's money flying around, but this is impacting people's lives, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, life by life. Now this has become abstract for me. It was $1.6 billion and 60,000 people. I can't. I guess I could go to Kenan Stadium and count the seats, and maybe that would tell. But the numbers are so astronomical. It becomes hard for me to wrap my head around it. But they're just countless people. That we have helped one person at a time, and we've made massive differences in people's lives. And then probably the biggest impact we had was in the Black farmers case, which is sort of the case of my lifetime, which we brought against the United States government, sued them for discrimination against African American farmers. And we got in way over our head. I brought into the case early on. I told my wife, this is going to be easy. We'll make a killing. We'll help all these people. And before I knew it, we had committed a few $1 million to it, and the price of poker kept going up. We had the lead role in funding the case, and really the case became a political case where we had to get the funding from the federal government. The government was ready to settle it, but we had to get the government to appropriate the settlement, which was $1.25 billion. And so I had borrowed so much money that I couldn't. We had to get the money in that session of Congress, or I'd be out millions. And we had a professional lobbying team in DC that they were trying to work it, and they weren't getting very far, and it was very frustrating and very scary. And we ended up having to figure out how to try to move the government by ourselves. And we had a great farm advocate by the name of John Boyd, and we worked with him, and Eric Sanchez from our firm was instrumental in this. Michelle knows him. And anyway, we figured out how we did all publicity stunts. We had to put pressure on the government to get them to settle this case. First, we pressured the Obama administration, picketed outside the Department of Justice, said they're bailing out car companies and insurance companies. What about something for the Black farmers? And we got them to agree to it, and then we had to get Congress to agree to it. And you know how difficult it is to get anything done in Washington. It was a harrowing journey. About 9 times it went up for a vote and failed, and then on the last possible time, it went through, and we got our $1.25 billion. And the beautiful thing is, as a result, we got out of the trap, but we ended up they're helping so many farmers. And they each got $50,000 each, which in some ways was insufficient considering the history of discrimination. But I think it meant a lot to them because it was a significant amount of money, and it kind of represented an apology and a validation that what they had been through was real, and that the government was acknowledging responsibility for mistreating them. That probably was the case of my lifetime. We had a party for some of the North Carolina-based farmers and wanted to just get to meet them and see what difference it made in their lives. And I remember one of them, she didn't trust the banks, and she had her $50,000 under her mattress, but because she didn't trust the government. But that was her plan. But anyway,
do you blame her?
Right.
So Michelle,
Right.
yeah, Michelle, don't tell anyone where your address is because they're going to come looking under your mattress.
Exactly. How long did that case take, Jim, from start to finish?
We got into it in 2007, and we're done about 2013. So six years.
And you thought that was going to be
Six
easy at
harrowing
the beginning? Really?
I did because it seemed like the Congressional Black Caucus was all for it, and it felt like there was a lot of bipartisan support. And the litigation side was a little bit easy because there was a previous settlement. This was the second black farmer settlement. There was a previous one, and there's a template, and it was going to be resolved without any litigation. It was purely a political. I mean, it was going to be a settlement agreement. It was just purely a political case. And I thought we had the politicians behind us and we would get the money pretty easily if the law passed and the enabling legislation passed, which it did. But then I severely underestimated the risks and how hard it would be to get stuff done in Washington. It's kind of a lot of times entrepreneurs are like that. You get the allure of the robbery, and you discount the risks and how hard it is to get until you're in and you're committed and you're in too deep and you can't. And the only way out is through, and that was the case. And my wife Robin, who again Michelle knows, she was drug along for this ride, and she was the one who had been saying, come on, how easy? You think this is going to be easy? What do you know about civil rights law and taking a case into D.C.? And I said, no, it'll be easy. And she got, she was right, but I got the last word in because we got out of
it. Always listen to your wife.
Yes, always listen.
Yes, I agree. Michelle, I mean, were you around during this case?
No, that was way past my time there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
No, I came out of the DA's
Michelle
office. And worked for Jim. And
That's
he
right.
was in Durham at that point. He had an office downtown. I don't know how many employees. How many employees did you have at that point?
Probably 30 or 40 back then, don't you think?
I think I was the only litigator as well when I was there, wasn't I? And now you have like a bunch.
Yeah, then we added a couple. But yeah, we're always struggling to build our litigation reputation. That was more difficult. Yeah, we would sign up cases and work them and settle them pre-suit, but hiring and keeping litigators was more of a challenge. And so
we jump around.
Michelle had, and Michelle had the skills from prosecuting, and we had fun for a good year until she decided it's time to go do something else.
Yes, and now she keeps people out of jail, which is great. And that's awesome. And so, when you have a big case like that, and you've got people think all the time like, oh, it's just all money. You're making money. What's it feel like to be putting all that? I mean, because you're kind of, especially when it comes to Congress, right? You're gambling because a jury is one thing. You've got some control over the people on there, but Congress, you've got like no control. What was going through your mind?
It's a whole different thing, isn't it? I mean, that ups the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a harrowing, helpless feeling. I couldn't get out of it. We were representing the clients. We committed financially to doing it. Instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, we had to try to figure out a way to succeed. And I think that's the way people are in getting ready for any case. You're in it and you have some doubts, but you got to fight through it and pull it together and try your best case. And for us, it was, what can we control? What can we do to increase the odds that Congress will fund this? And we couldn't rely on our outside lobbyists, but this guy, John Boyd, who's our partner in this case, the black farmer, great stuntsman. He would ride around DC in a tractor to draw attention to it. He had CNN following him.
Wow.
I Ghost wrote an op-ed piece that was published in the New York Times. He wrote stuff we wrote stuff for him in the Washington Post. We would bombard Congress with robocalls. We had a bunch of clients, and we would just tell them to call. And there were like 60,000 of clients that we had, and we had them just, all right, call your congressman, and they would flood them with. And so anyway, we were doing whatever we could to put pressure on Congress. A lot of it was just staying relevant, getting the news media to continue to follow it. But anyway, to answer your question, we just had to figure it out, and I couldn't really focus on personal stuff and what was at stake. And I think one of the real stories of this case is I probably got in it for mixed motives. Wanted to do a case that was of historical significance, thought it'd be easy, make some money, and help black farmers. that got me into the case. And when I was into deep, I think the thing that got us through it is, let's just, instead of worrying about us and how we're going to turn out, let's focus on doing the right thing for these clients, these people who've suffered for so long, been discriminated against. As a lawyer, you can't forget your focus has to be your clients. And so redemption was really through focusing on them, taking care of their interests, doing a good job for them, and believing that at the end we'll be taken care of as a result, instead of putting us first.
I hear that all the time from like the best attorneys I talk to, and Michelle. Now, that it's about focusing on the clients, focusing on them, focusing on their stories, and it kind of makes sense, right? It's like if you're doing anything pretty intense, you've got to focus on what you're doing, not on you. Otherwise, it's going to all unravel.
Yeah, and I think that it's sort of a law of the universe. If you're really in it for yourself and you're trying to use clients as a mean to do something for yourself, I don't think it's going to work
Nope.
out as well for you if
Agreed.
put them first.
And
got to be in it for the right reason.
How, like both of you, how do you keep reminding yourself of that? Because it's, I mean, especially like, checks are going out, or you've got a crazy client that's calling you at 24 hours a day, and like, there's nothing you can do. How do you reset that? I mean, how do you keep it separate and reset that?
Well, it's easier now with the power of these Google reviews. They can crush your practice with a 1-star review, and so we that reminds us all the time the need to put them first to make sure that we get those reviews. But it's an ongoing battle, and it's not just for me now. It's the 63 other lawyers who are working here, and we just talk about it and try to make sure. One of our tenets is do the right thing always, play the long game, and good things will come your way. And if you try to cut some shortcuts or put yourself first, you won't be prosperous for long.
And what do you, with that case, what was your biggest lesson?
Listen to my wife.
We're going to send her this episode. You're going to have the best Christmas ever.
For sure. Yeah.
And so
he also has he talked about Eric Sanchez, an awesome guy that works at the firm, and he's been with him since the beginning, right, Jim?
Yeah.
And he's
2000 is when he joined. He actually is now consulting with the firm and is also doing some stuff on his own. So we still work together all the time. He's been integral in building the firm, and Michelle knows him well, and he was the force behind the Black Farmer case for us.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And so, I mean, running, we're talking about law, but there's the business of law, and it's, people think, well, it's just an attorney, you make tons of money, and you drive your Ferrari around Wilmington Beach. But it's not that easy, is it? And you were talking a little bit about, people stealing cases, people leaving. Tell me a little bit about some of the crazy things you've had now since running this big of a law firm.
Yeah, there have been a few. So you've heard more money, more problems. So there's also more people, more problems. So with 300 people and 60 of them being lawyers, there's a potential for some weird things happening. And I've certainly lived some of them. When Michelle was there, and she might remember this, there was an attorney who was, I think he's a partner, a shareholder at the time, that we worked with, and he and I had a disagreement, and it was a significant one. I didn't know how bad it was. He was in the Raleigh office. I think, Michelle, you might have been were you in the Raleigh office then too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there were several attorneys in the Raleigh office, and then we had the Durham office, and we didn't have Zoom, so the only way you could see what was going on was to drive over there and visit. We tried to stay in touch, but there were kind of separate cultures developing, and I guess a rift developed with this partner, so much so that one day, to my amazement, he backed up rented a moving van, backed it up outside on the street, and took computers and case files with him. And so Michelle was there. She was not the managing partner. There was a managing partner at the time who this happened under his watch. And he said, well, he was in a mediation, so he didn't know anything about it. I didn't find that to be a very convincing story. It was none too pleased, and we ended up having, as often happens, some litigation against this guy, and we worked it out. But it was uh, bizarre.
Well, you're managing like so many different lawyers, and you're having to. I mean, that is your main job, is to manage the firm. Is that not right? I mean, you don't litigate it like. Well, you've not litigated, right? When you.
Yeah, I focus on just on managing the firm right now.
Yeah, and
And,
just.
I
I mean, just managing people, period. But having 60 lawyers, good Lord, I couldn't imagine.
yeah,
Just,
and there have been some other problems. I had one lawyer who left us. It wasn't a very pleasant departure. He brought some litigation against us, which I thought was ill-founded, but we ended up resolving that case. He wanted some money, and then on top of that, we had a Remington statue, a replica Remington, that he really fancied, and he insisted that as condition of the settlement, he get the Remington.
so
And
wait. Was the Remington yours? Was it the firm's? I mean, was it his?
yes,
Why
it was
was he
the firm.
claiming ownership over it?
Maybe it was sitting in his office or in the hall, and he liked it. But that was his last acorn, the last pound of flesh he wanted to get. Is he had to get the Remington. So we settled, and it included getting the Remington.
This sounds like a
And
divorce.
we
It's like
delivered.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
more.
and he got the Remington, but let me just say he may not have gotten it in pristine condition. We might have done some things to it.
Yeah, this definitely sounds like a divorce. Uh, it-
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Michelle, I want to go back to the moving truck real quick. Did you see this happen? Yeah.
Me? I was in the bathroom. No, I didn't see it. I did not see that. I don't know where I was. Was I there? I don't know. I played the fifth.
You
I
were,
don't know that I saw it.
Oh my God,
there
that's
was
crazy.
she was not the managing partner, so I didn't hold it against
Oh,
her.
Thank
oh
you.
my gosh.
Thank you for
I,
that.
I just like it's like these kinds of things, like you said, like being an entrepreneur, you never thought any of this stuff's gonna happen, and then it's got to make you feel like maybe I should just go back to a solo shop sometimes.
And like he said, it wasn't where you had spyware and he could see what was going on in the different offices. You have to physically go there. So, people were probably stealing him blind, Remingtons and whatever else too, right?
Yeah. The other thing that was different back then, it was before cell phones and being able to video things. I think in retrospect, that was a very good thing because, as Michelle remembers, in our early days, we were a bit wild and crazy and we partied too hard and we were just a bit less professional and we had a little less decorum than we do now. And it's a damn good thing we didn't have cell phone cameras
Yeah.
to record all
Yes,
that.
it is.
I know. I was just talking to a friend and client, and I was like, I was asking about some photos for his website for like 20 years ago. I was like, I don't have any of that. It's like funny that we have more photos and videos of us in a single year than we had for our previous entire life.
I
I
know.
mean, this Christmas, you're probably gonna have more photos shot than you did through high school of you. Uh,
Mhm.
Jim, so how has and Michelle, tell me too. Now, I mean, we've had a lot of stuff happen. Zoom's changed everything. Obviously, the internet's changed everything. How perceived, how juries, happen, how juries work, how juries see things. What do you think's the biggest change in, being an attorney and running a law firm in the past, like, let's say 3 years, 4 years? Because, Michelle's got a small firm. You've got a very, very large firm. Jim, you go first.
A huge change for us as a result of the pandemic was remote work. And, right now I'm in the Durham office. We could fit 80 people or 100 people. There are probably 30 people in here. People are working from home. We have employees in other countries. We have employees in other states. Attorneys are choosing to work from home a lot. We have decided to enable that and to just get behind it and not force people back into the office. Even though I'm old school, I'm here and I like face to face. That's just how I'm wired. A lot of people, they won't make the commute to Durham, and we would lose employees. So we've had, for talent retention, acquisition and retention meetings reasons, we've had to embrace remote work. But that's changed everything. Now we have to be experts at Zoom. We have to try to build community and stay connected in different ways. So that's, to me, that's been the biggest change in the last few years.
Yeah. Makes it much harder for someone to back up a moving truck too, if they're in another state.
That's the way to go for a house.
I bet he has cameras in these offices now.
Michelle, I mean, how do you see it? I mean, especially, you worked there, you worked for, and they were still a good sized firm, 40 people. You've seen it transform. What do you think's been the biggest change for you?
Well, like Jim said, you go to the office every single day. I was driving from Raleigh to Durham, every day. And you are face to face with your coworkers, with people, it's just more of an interaction. Whereas now, in my particular area of law, criminal law mostly, we do a lot of WebExes for calendar calls now. We have more judge conferences over WebEx, Zoom, etc. So I like it personally, but I also like the face-to-face interaction with judges and other lawyers as well. So that's the biggest thing for me. And then in my particular forte here with criminal law, there's more like, because we have cell phones and because we have more means and technology, when I get to trial or when I'm doing something like that, there's a lot more to look at. And everybody's recording everybody now. In my particular line of work, there's always somebody that has something, a Ring camera, a cell phone coverage. So it's the technology has just completely changed. I think now, especially since COVID and especially since we're doing more remote work, and I don't, Jim runs a huge firm. I don't, I got a couple of interns. I have a small firm, but I would imagine for him, getting everybody together and, I like brainstorming, and when I'm going to try a case or I like having another lawyer right there so I can talk to them and get their ideas, as well as other people. So I don't know, Jim, do you miss that part of it or?
I definitely do. I long for it, but I just, I'm not going to be able to change it. I'm not going to win the battle, so I got to move on. I also think for young litigators, it's a real disadvantage. I think the best way to learn the craft of litigation is to sit down with someone knee to knee and just work on a case together and bounce ideas off each other. I think sitting at home in isolation makes that collaboration and that learning much more difficult. Do you agree, Michelle?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that just might be, old school too, but I like, I like being in the room with somebody and talking about ideas personally.
Yeah. I will say, speaking out the other side of my mouth, there are many days where I love being able to work remotely. The schedule, the freedom it gives us with our schedules. Like tomorrow, I'm going to work tomorrow morning from the house, and then I'm going on to another meeting instead of having to drive into the office for spend an hour commuting both ways for 2 or 3 hours of work. I mean, I save that hour. I have a place in Wilmington, in the Wilmington office, so I'm able to work out of there Fridays, Mondays sometimes. So it's just that flexibility.
The Durham office, he had a gym, and he was there first thing in the morning. I was usually there in the morning too. But him and I were about the only ones that used it when I was there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been incredible. Jim, thank you so much for being on True Law Stories. Michelle, thank you so much for co-hosting. Jim, Farrin.com, Farrin.com. Tell us once again about the law you practice and the people that you help.
Yeah, we help people primarily in North Carolina, some in South Carolina who need some justice on a contingency basis. So we'll focus on personal injury, auto wrecks, workers' comp, Social Security disability, land condemnation matters, and even class actions and mass tort cases. We didn't talk about Camp Lejeune. That's the next big thing, supposedly. So we're busy with that.
We'll definitely have to have you back on because Camp Lejeune is a hot topic for sure. That's super interesting. And Michelle, you're still one of my favorite previous episodes. If you folks haven't watched Michelle's episode, we'll put a link in the show notes. There's some crazy stories in there. But Michelle, tell us a little bit more about your practice.
I'm a criminal law attorney primarily, and my office is located in Wilmington. I also have a law office in Raleigh, in downtown Raleigh. Former prosecutor in Wake County, and I used to work for Jim Farrin.
Awesome. So we'll put a link to both those websites. Obviously, awesome people, awesome attorneys. Hopefully you don't need them, but if you do need them, you know where to find them. Jim, thanks again for being on. Michelle, thank you for being on, and thank you all for taking us on your journey. This has been Iron Garlic and True Law Stories.